everybody, welcome to another session. Today we're going to split my session into kind of a thing. First I'm going to talk about is Revit content. So you guys were probably waiting like, okay, where's the new content, where is it, right? So today I'm going to just show you what I've been up to. Now, one of the things about Revit is that you want to have as much content available to you as much as possible so that you don't have to recreate all of this content. The problem with the current Revit state is that contents are everywhere. It could be SketchUp import into Revit, or it could be Revit and its very detailed model. So here what I did is that I basically took the best of everything and then I just recreate them, and some of them I just like trying to kind of optimize it so that you guys could use it. Okay, so where is the content located? Right now, currently, I put it under this particular folder. Okay, I'll probably do a write-up, right? So you guys could actually know how to access the content. So basically what I have in here is that I split it into a couple of things. The annotation is mostly like if you're doing graphical, like anything that's override, it's going to be there. Right now I haven't really get everything up to snuff because right now we're still working on some, I guess standardization, how symbology works and stuff like that. So the two things I'm focusing mostly. Okay. Hi Jim, how's it going? Hello? Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's fine.
Okay, so today I'm just going to be talking about two things. If you missed the earlier call, is that we're going to talk about first where's the content, and then the next one's going to be a little bit more repeating from my last session, how to create a basic family. So in here, this is where the contents will be located. I'm just going to do a write-up. So it basically splits up into two categories that you guys are going to be watch out for. Is one of them is going to be the detail components, and the other one's going to be the model component. Okay. The detail components are basically anything with 2D, and then you just want to put stuff on top of it. That's where it is. The model part is just that whenever there's a model element in it, that's where it is. Now, if you want to add those content to shortcuts, I'm just going to show you how to do it. Right? It's pretty simple. All you have to do is just go to Revit and go to Option. And in there, what you have is that you have this called the file location, and then click on the places. And what you're going to do is that you could just keep adding in, let's say if you want Revit via model content, via detail content, you just add them on, and then what happens is that once you locate that location into the server, then what you have is that every time when you open up a new, let's say, a new session, you want to open up a current content, all you have to do is just click on this. And yeah, it's basically, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how to do it. So first you're just going to go to Option. Okay, just go to File Location, go to Places. Here I already put it in, I'm just going to remove it. Okay, so it's pretty simple how you do it. You could add like multiple locations, right? You could put it like anywhere in the server and stuff like that. If you have like a typical library that you have for your particular project, this is a perfect place to do it. But try not to go overboard because sometimes you will lose track. So what I would do is that I'm just going to put it in here. It's called via model content. And what I'm going to do is that just basically just go in there, just go to the G drive, right, and just go to the template resources. Go to the BIM standards framework, and what you're going to do is just click on the library and content, and it's under via the depot. But in here you got model. I'm just going to choose the model. Okay, and then here again I'm just going to do the same thing via detail content. Okay, do the same thing, make sure it's the same, and then I'm just going to do the same thing for the G drive, template, BIM standard, framework, CAD, and depot, and details. I'm just going to put that in. Now, so whenever I'm going to, let's say, choose a new project, let's say construct a template. Now what you have is that you now have access to the content. So what you can do is that you're just going to go in here, and your shortcuts is down here. Let's say if I want to choose a detail component, right? So in here, what you have is that the detail components is basically like if you have studs, anything with, if you're drawing some sort of detail stuff, it's gonna be in there. But I'm gonna keep constantly adding on to this. Okay, just look at it, and then if you don't think that it has enough stuff, and then you have other stuff, just send it to me. I'll just put it on there. Now for detail, what you could do is that, okay, so let's say if you're doing a plan or a section elevation, and you just want to basically pretty up your, let's see, elevations, this is a perfect place to do it. Okay, those are all 2D elements. There's no 3D stuff. So what you can do is that you just take it there, just copy it, and then you just go in here and you just go paste it in and say okay.
Are they 2D families or just 2D line?
It's a detail component. So detail components is basically it can work with plan, elevation, section. So you can just copy it in and paste it in. Okay.
But I mean, my question is, they were not made in family editor because.
This is family. This is a family, but they're just basically family. It's a 2D family. Okay. So they're basically detail items. So think of it as like if you're putting in studs and stuff like that, it falls under that category. So this will appear like multiple views. If you want to use it for section elevation, just pop it in there. It works fine. Okay. So most of the time I just use this if you want to do like, let's say DP, like you're just submitting for design development, right? So you want to pretty up your pictures. So rather than using, let's say, some other software like Adobe to color it, you can just put this, copy it, paste it in, and it's pretty quick. Okay, so for the model component, so let's say if I go in here and just click on content, what I have is that I split up into based on what they are. Okay, so let's say for example you want a furniture, so I'm just going to go click on this and just open it up. So this furniture has pretty much, I've downloaded a lot of the contents from a lot of the manufacturers and stuff like that, so I have to clean them up, optimize it, and basically it's ready to use. Okay, so what they have is that you pretty much have most of the stuff that you want. Okay, if you have a special item that it's not in there, let me know. Just send the family to me. I'll just add it onto this library. Some of the contents can be huge. So in the future, what happens is that if it gets too big, I may have to split it up based on what they are. Okay, so this furniture library is about like it's a lot. So what you have is that you have a lot of families in here, and then when you go to 3D, this is what you get, okay? And what you can do is that you can just pick and choose what you want out of this family, okay? So let's say, for example, I want like this sort of a chair. Let's say I'm going to go assistance. This is what I want. All I have to do is just copy it, and then you just go into your project and just paste it in, okay? Just paste it in here. Okay, it's pretty simple. It's just basically just look for what you want and then just paste in whatever looks the best. Okay, I'm not gonna basically, I'm not gonna judge you by what you want to do with your project. Okay, but this is available to everybody. Okay, so you can do it. Some of them are kind of out of place. You notice, like if let's say you have this sort of a cubicle, this is just it's just there. Okay, I just use it in because it's a portable meeting. In some cases, if you're doing offices, they need this sort of a thing, then yes. And like this, for example, screen, this is a designer screen. It was pretty nice. So I just put it in as a way to kind of, let's say if you want to do a design kind of a studio where you want to do renovation, you want to show a lot of this artistic kind of a style. There you go, there's the screen. It looks out of place, but it looks nice when you do rendering and stuff like that. So.
Shouldn't we save the families that we want to use in our project to the project family library within
the folder? You can, but the thing is that we want to reduce that as much as possible. So what you do is just go in there and just grab what you want. But if you do find certain things from manufacturer that you want to put in there, right? It's not in there, then yes, you can save it there and then just send me a link saying, oh look, I found this family. Can you take a look? You know, this could be beneficial for the next project. Then yes, I would do that. Okay, so here this is kind of like one shop stop for everything. So you can just grab what you want. Okay, different designers, and some of them I just took it from the existing project. And what I find with a lot of the existing projects that it has certain libraries that you guys can use. So I just put it in there. This one is just basically from a lot of the manufacturers. So yeah, just pick and choose what you want.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I know that some certain things in the beginning is that people use this. This is sort of a thing I want to avoid as much as possible, which is the AutoCAD imported into as a family. This was an existing. I just left it in there, just an example, saying that you know what, if there is a Revit version of it, I would just attempt to use the Revit version. Because the problem with the AutoCAD is that it has a lot of faces, and sometimes it will bring in a lot of this really unknown errors, okay, into your Revit model. And sometimes you see that there's a dot in here, right? So I'm not sure what that dot. It could be that sometimes the model wasn't clean, and then user just put it in there and just assume that it works. But sometimes you get this little tiny, really annoying holes. So there's not that much you can do about it. Okay? So simple as that. Any question with this content? You could just look at it. Like if you want cars and stuff like that, I also put it under transportation. Okay, so what this does is that it can be heavy. Like I just warn people is that if you are planning to use some of this content, let's say for example if you're doing SkyTrain station or some sort of study LRT, this model can be heavy because they're very detailed in terms of how they were built. Okay, so let's say for example this is a train. Okay, I also have this mock-up AT. Yeah, Star Wars, if you're Star Wars fans. This was built by somebody else, okay? So what I did here is that basically I took like all the Revit model, it has a train. I did build this for my previous job, so if you want like a SkyTrain kind of a model, there you go, it's in there. There's also like a bunch of families for like different cars that you can use, okay? So yeah, just be careful because they could be heavy, because like if you look at the fire truck, it's a lot of modeling. Okay, but they're Revit, so that's the nicest thing.
So for the CAD model, do you go back and edit it in CAD, or you can?
No, this is Revit. This is pure Revit.
The previous chair.
Oh, the previous chair. The previous chair, it's kind of like you can do it, but I just say, you know what? I would just say don't use it, right? Just pick another chair, because I did copy it in like multiple different office chair that has the same thing, but it looks differently, at least slightly. But yeah, use that as an alternative. Okay, but if you don't have any things that is in there, just let me know. I'll try to find it as best as I can. Okay, one thing I want to avoid is having that AutoCAD things chunk as much as possible.
Wait, sorry, I missed where this library is saved.
Oh, okay. The libraries to save is under. Let's see. I'm just gonna go back. So it's under G, templates and resources, under BIM standard. Oops, sorry. BIM standard framework, and then other library contents via Depot. I'm gonna do a write up, and then you guys can just access it and add that to your shortcut, basically. Okay. The second part of my presentation is going to be just a recap of how to build the Revit families. So if you're here for the previous Revit session, there's going to be a little bit of repeating, but at the same time, I'm also going to show you guys how to add multiple families. So say, for example, you want to take the chair, you want to have a table, and how you combine them together, sort of thing. Okay? So in here, I'm just going to open up my, let's see, Revit family creation. So some of this is going to repeat. I won't go too. I'm just going to go like really fast on this presentation. Okay, so if you know how to create a Revit family, there's always going to be three things, right? So there's going to be system, in place, and component families. Okay, so most of the time you're going to do is that you're going to do a lot of component families. That's going to be the main focus. And there's also different types. So you have model, annotation, details, grids, and levels. Okay. And there's other categories you have to understand about families. Is that you have to know about categories, family types, instance properties, type properties. Those are basically the basic stuff that if you work with Revit before, you sort of know all those terms. Okay, nothing too special. This one I just basically compare between the Revit and AutoCAD. One thing AutoCAD cannot do, which Revit can, is that AutoCAD, when you do dynamic blocks, it's always going to be 2D, whereas Revit, you can do three-dimensional stuff. And the other stupid thing about Revit doesn't do is that it does not create as much type categories, like how you do different types. You can still do it in here, but it's very, very minimal. Okay, so most cases Revit families has a lot of like built-in data that you can put it in, whereas AutoCAD you can't do much. Now, what we typically do is that when you build families, you always have to use this reference plane. Okay, I always build the skeleton first, which is the reference plane, before I do any modeling, because what happens is that it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Okay, and then what I typically do with the reference line is that if you want to do like angles and stuff like that, that's how I do it. Sometimes what tends to happen is that reference line will break. Okay, so whenever you rotate beyond, let's say 130 degrees, or like let's say 90 degree, and you want to go beyond that, sometimes this will break. I don't know why. It's just that it's a programming. It's Revit programming. So if it falls within the less than 1 and then less than 89, you're fine. But if you go beyond that, or like at that, let's say you put at 0 or 90, sometimes when you want to flip it back to 45, your Revit model just breaks. Okay, it's a stupid thing, but just something to be aware of. When you plan to build your families, I always think about telling people what you want out of that. Do you want your family to be hosted on objects or just to be a standalone? Okay, so I always do that. I just tell people what you want. Okay, and also think about using one family for multiple conditions. Okay, that way you have one family rather than create multiple families. You have one family that can take care of 20 different things. Okay, so if that's the best, that's how I would approach it. Okay, so this one is kind of like I also mentioned is that is your family going to be showing up in multiple views? So let's say if you want like 3D views, 2D views, etc., then you would do the 3D part. But if you only want to show it in 2D, okay, you don't care about showing up in elevation and stuff like that, then I'll just say, okay, just do a 2D component family. Okay? Yeah, this one, same thing. I'm just basically repeating what I did previously. So that if it has to be 2D, then you just use that. This presentation is going to be on a server, so you guys can just look at it, just plan it out how you want to do it. Most of the time, you guys don't have to plan a lot or build this family. So all you have to do is just ask me. I'll just give you the family, and you don't have to think about it. But if you do run into issues where you don't think that family works or the family breaks on you, then I'll have to step in and just help you fix that family. Now, sometimes you do run into special properties for the families. Just something to watch out for. So if you run into families that you want to cut, let's say you want to show the properties of it, these are basically the families that you can cut through it and see it. So if you run into this, it means that it will cut. So anything else, it just shows as elevations. Okay, that's basically what it is. Doors and windows has the special properties. So if you draw like 2D line types, and then if it's cuts in certain plane, it will display cut. And sometimes what happens is that this only shows up in doors and windows. All right, AutoCAD families and okay. So what I mentioned before is that you could have AutoCAD objects in your Revit families, but just be aware that sometimes if there's an error inside your AutoCAD, it will add that error into your Revit project. So sometimes there's no control. Okay, this is why I try to avoid external program putting into your Revit, because it will sometimes crash your Revit. Now, one of the things I would use is that if the detail components require distance less than 1/32 of an inch, right? So let's say if you're doing like a perfect example would be detail component of your door sill or window jamb, right? So those manufacturers has a certain curves and curvature that's less than 1/32. Then that's where I'm gonna say, okay, that's the only way you can actually insert your AutoCAD into your Revit. But other than that, you don't have to. Okay. Now, sometimes complex geometry. Let's say if you have like a really fancy kind of a chair like this, right? Normally, Revit it can be done, but it's very complicated. So what typically people do is that they would use AutoCAD or other third-party 3D software build it in, and then when you import it in, it looks really nice, but those are basically done by third party, which is fine. If you cannot do it inside Revit, Revit has a limitation, that's a problem. All right, visibility control, you've probably seen this if you know how family works, is that sometimes visibility, you want to make sure that that object shows up in, if I see plan, floor plan, left and right, RCP, and it also has this course level as well. Okay, you will see the family in certain cases when manufacturer built it, is that they will show course level, medium level, and fine as a different kind of look. All right, so just keep in mind, some of the families that I have loaded in there will have this kind of a family. Okay, so just be aware. If you do say, I want to make sure that my family looks consistent, just let me know. I'll configure it for you. Okay, just keep in mind. Family subcategory. Okay, so whenever you have a very, very complicated families, this is going to be happening more and more as you build more of, let's say, a casework, like a kitchen cabinets with some, let's say, appliances in it. That's where you have to put in that subcategory so that you can actually split up what you want certain things to turn on and off. This is very important if you're doing, let's say, if you have a bathtub with walls around it built into the family. And what happens is that if you want to show elevation one side, and then if you want to show like the opposite side, one of the wall has to be turned off, right? Normally with plumbing families, it would not show a cut section. So when you cut in that place, it won't show. So it basically always shows the elevation of it. So what subcategory does is that when you can put one of the walls in one category, subcategory, let's say left wall, right wall, and then side walls, etc. In your subcategory, you can actually manually turn those off, so you can actually see through that plumbing fixture. Okay, it's a complicated way of doing things, right? So those are basically, I would say, 9 out of 10 you guys would not encounter this as much. But in certain cases, if you want your category to be in, let's say, plumbing fixtures, but if you want to see the interior of your plumbing fixtures, then you have to create this subcategory. Okay? It can be confusing, but as you kind of work along with this, sometimes you will have to have it. Okay? Now, if you are exporting, let's say, Revit to another software, let's say SketchUp, what tends to happen is that when Revit exports certain objects, it will categorize them as the same layers. For instance, if you are building let's say, mullions with the glass, what happens is that when you export them, they treat all of those to be the same. So what subcategory would do is that you can actually turn them off and then break them up into its own individual components, so that you can say window frame and only window glass. When you export them out, there are two different objects. So they're two different layers rather than having a single layer. Okay, so those are basically the kind of like how you do it if you want to do some certain things. All right, let's do a demonstration, a very quick one. All right, so in my session, what I typically do is that I just built something small and then work towards more. How many seen how I built the table? Very simply, no? All right, so let's build a table, very simple. So the first thing you do is that when you choose, you want to choose something that's very simple. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick the furniture. So the next thing I'm going to do is that I would just basically, I'll set it to fraction. Okay, so it's much easier for both of us, right? So the first thing I would do is that when I create something, let's say I want to do the width. Okay, I always set this as 2 feet. I always do it equal, okay, in the beginning. You could do this and hit equal, but I would never do that. You know the reason why, right? If you, no, because what happens is that if you do this equal, sometimes what happens is that this middle part will shift. Okay, your origin point will shift. If you have an existing family, that will trigger it to offset all your family to be off. Okay, just to be careful, because I've seen it done, and it completely shifted a family, I would say, oh man, this is bad. So be careful. So what I typically do is that if you are building a family, try to attempt to basically make it equal. Then you can say, okay, make it equal. Okay, so in here, I could just go in here, make it equal, and then just give it like a width. The reason why I do equal is because if you say this is going to be 3 feet, this is going to be equal. Okay, that's how you do it inside Revit. And this one I'm just going to say width. You could do instance, but I'm going to choose type parameter. Now there's a difference. One instance parameter is basically you don't care the sizes. Let's say if you're in a beginning phase of your project, where you're gonna do like let's say a massing where you don't care the size of the table and stuff like that. You want to like randomize, then choose instance. Okay, so you can just flex it whenever you want. But if you know that the size from manufacturer is going to be certain size, then choose the type parameter. That's the difference. So here, and then I'm just going to choose length. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the height. And I'm just going to add 2 ones. So let's say, for example, this is basically the tabletop. The first thing you do is that lock the first one. So this is going to be your general, and then whatever is left over is going to be your minor. Okay, so I always go this is first. You could do it from here to there and then add it to another one, but I like to do it like okay, first dimension always go first. That's the primary, and then this is the secondary. Okay, so here I could just say choose height. I'm just going to call it height, and then this one I'm just going to call it table. Tabletop. Normally what I typically like to do is that I like to describe it as long as possible so that whenever the user wants to do this, they understand what I did. Okay. You can also label a lot of this reference plane saying that this is the tabletop, etc. But in this demonstration, I'm not going to do that. Okay. And also just make it so that they round up. Okay. I know that sometimes minor things does make a difference. This what happens that you want to basically round up all your dimensions. You do not want to have a fraction or something because it's going to look weird. Unless you're in millimeters, then yeah, just go ahead. But for this, I just want to keep it simple. Okay, last thing I'm going to do is the legs. So here I'm just going to do a simple legs here. And I'm missing one more. There you go. Okay. Again, here I'm just going to do 2 inches. Okay. Two inches. So you gotta build one of those IKEA furniture. So they're basically using the same design. So 4 inches and then 2 inches or something. So okay, here what I'm going to do is that you could just basically draw it into the reference plane. Okay. The minute you do that, it will just lock it in. Okay. So next I want to do is that lift it up and lock it. Okay. Lift it up here and lock it. Okay. Okay, so for this one, I'm just going to say leg, yeah, sure, leg width. Now, when you build any families, what I typically like to do is that you could do this. You could do multiples, like that, okay, just for simplicity. But there's a danger in this. Do you know what's the danger if you do this?
All your legs will move, like when you change one dimension.
It will change. Okay, I'll just tell you simply if you've built this before. What happens is that Revit family has this tendency, if this particular one, let's say for example, this leg and this leg hit 0, it would say cannot create family. Okay, so when this gap and this gap hits 0, it will just clash. It just will not work. Okay, so if you, for the best practice, typically what I would do is that I would create all of this individually. But for this exercise, I'll just say I'm just going to create this very fast. So just keep in mind, so if you are building your own families, always keep it as individual items, okay? Unless those items are not moving, okay? If you want to flex, keep it individual. Something, it's a tips that I've learned, okay? And then what you could do with this is just lift it up and lock it. Okay, now time to flex your chair, or let's say I'm gonna go 2 feet 6. Let's say 4 inches, and then say hit apply. Okay, great. And then let's say I want to make it 4 feet. Great. So there you go. You successfully built your first table, IKEA table. Okay, it's pretty simple. So I'm just basically showing you kind of like the meats and bones, how you would build like something that's very simple. Okay. Now the next step I'm going to show you guys now is that how do you take that component that I've showed you and build it into more of like a family. Okay. So this is the first step. The second step would be, let's say I'm going to open up my furniture family. Okay, this component, and then I want to take a table, and then I'm going to take in a couple of chairs. And then if I have time, I'll show you guys how I would build a hosted, let's say for example a door, simple door, or an opening. Okay, so let's say for example I'm going to pick a table. Okay, let's say what's a good table? This one looks like a table. Which one? Yeah, let's pick this one. So the first thing I would do is that you edit the table and you load it in. Okay, it could be family. Oh, okay, I forgot to put it in a new family. Okay, so now I'm going to do is I just choose the same family, just say metric family. Okay, this one's going to call family 2. So next thing I'm going to do is that I'm just going to load it in to family 2. Okay, so here, just place it in there. That's fine. You do the same thing for the chair as well. So here I'm just going to go into chair. What looks good? Just got to go 3D and just look at it, and then what looks good. Let's go with the fancy one, whichever is the fancy one. Wow, that looks fancy. All right. So what you do is that you do this, and then just load it in to your family 2. Good. So it will remember. Okay. So the first time when you built it in, it will remember what's happening with the previous one. Now here, what you're going to do is that you're going to basically align it to the center point. So what happened is that some of the tables, you can just basically lock it up. Okay. It has the center point. Okay, some families are built like that. I make sure that a lot of the families have the center point so that you guys can just basically align it. Next thing you do is that, okay, so if you want to make the family, let's say for example, I'm going to put, let's say 3 tables. Okay, I'm just going to copy it here, just make it here. And next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to mirror this and mirror that. And then just put it like there. Sure, that's good. Okay, so this is basically a simple family that you guys can build. It's very simple. You don't have to put in anything in there, right? No parameters, nothing. All you're basically taking in is basically grabbing those furnitures and then just build it in and just put it in. Okay, there we go. That's what it looks like. Looks pretty sexy. And then now what you can do is that you can load it in. Now, if you want to, okay, so there's an issue with this. You guys see it, right? So what happened is that the table right now, what happens is that this chair has a 2D element, okay? And what happened is that whenever there's a 2D element, the table just basically overlaps. So basically the 2D element's always going to be on top of whatever the model elements. So to rectify that, first thing you're going to do is that here, you will add in your own masking region. Okay, here I'm just going to basically just show you. Okay, just basically just select the reference plane. just go yes, that's what I want, and then load it into family 2. Say okay. Doesn't work. Why is it? All right. I know some people are confused. No, you cannot. Okay, I'll show you a trick. Okay, because this is a tricky thing. People just like, oh, how do you do this, right? Okay, so first of all, if it's under shared, okay, so the first thing I would do is that just add this property. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to do is that I would do a projection height. But this one is okay. I'm not gonna worry about this much. This one.
I remember we had done these ones.
Yeah. Okay. So this one we don't care. Okay. It's this one that you want it to be. You want to show. So the first thing I would do is that just create like a really, really tall kind of an object, right? So let's say this one. I'm just gonna put it on. And call it, let's say, 1500, and then call this projection height. Okay, and what you're going to do is that you're just going to create a model line, okay, called the invisible, and just basically just do it like that. And the minute you load it in, there we go. That's the cheap trick, okay? So what you have to do is just basically just create like, you know, a model line of that family, and then it would just basically always go on top. Okay, that's the simple trick.
Because it basically raised the height.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's how you do it. If it's this will only works if it has 2D component families in your family. It will not work if it's a model family, because model family will automatically hide. Let's say if the object is below, it will automatically hide. This one only works if it's a 2D component. Okay, so if your family has a 2D component, this is what I would do, right?
And if we had added a plane as opposed to a line, then shouldn't work because
it would not work.
It only works with 2D elements.
Yes, that's correct.
That is higher than the rest.
Yeah, that's the thing. You just need like one invisible line. Okay, because whenever you have one invisible line, it just basically means, Revit think that, this is taller than this, so you basically set that this particular table is taller than that. So that's kind of like how I would trick Revit into believing that you can do it. Okay, this trick also works if you have a shared. Like what is shared? Okay, you notice that in this Revit, it has a check mark called shared. Okay, so what I would use shared for is that if you want to count how many chairs you have in your, let's say, this family, you have to check your object as shared. Okay? That way, Revit will treat that object as independent. Okay? When you load it into the family, it will start to show up as your quantity takeoff. This is important if you are doing, let's say, a lot of interiors. The client wants to know how many chairs you have. This is a way to go, okay? That's how you count. But for now, I'm not going to turn it on because there's the consequences about shared. Because once you check it on, you cannot uncheck it unless you create a new family and then rename it as a different family. Okay, just something to be aware of, okay? So I'll just say use it whenever you have to count that individual object. Now, you will see a lot more with shared when you're doing casework. Let's say you have a sink, okay? Because sink family is its own, and then the casework is going to be its own family. So what happened is that we have to use the plumbing fixture as shared. Okay, that's some. Okay, sure, no problem. So that's sort of a thing. Like if you have to do that. Okay, any questions so far with this? Pretty simple. Pretty simple family, right? Nothing to it. Okay. Let's say if you want to go more into, let's say, a hosted family, okay? Let's say let's do like a door. So you guys know how to build a door, sort of, inside Revit? A little bit? A little bit? Okay. I'm just going to show you pretty quickly how I would do it. Okay. The first thing first is that whenever you open this up, once you get into this territory, it can get really tricky. Okay, depending on how you do it. The first thing it has is that it has this default trim. Okay, it could be a good thing. could be a bad thing depending on how you do it. Now, the first thing I would do is that if you want to do like some sort of a knockout, let's say for example you're going to do a sliding door, okay, slider, like pocket door for instance. The pocket door has this so-called opening cut, okay? So what I want to do is that I want to create like a hole in here. Whenever I'm embedded my family, it wants to show that hole. So with this opening, it's only 2D flat thing. It just doesn't do anything. So the next thing I would do is I would just say, again, build your frame. Okay? Now, this can get tricky. Make sure that when you pick the right reference plane, because right now it's going to pick the wall as the center point, which is a no-no. Okay? So if you're too afraid, I typically say just turn off the wall for now, just hide it, so that you get a clear picture of what you want to build. So right now I'm just going to put reference plane to reference plane. You could do to that. Okay. Again, I'm just going to pick 1 1/4 and 1 1/4. And then what I would do with this is that I would lock it. And then just say pocket depth. Okay, that's how I do it. And then for, let's say for example for the door, sometimes this text can get so big, so what I typically like to do is just make it smaller. There we go. Now, how I would do the width is that this door width is going to be the same as this door width, because when you have a pocket door, it should be the same. So I would just say, okay, make it the same. Okay, and then just basically make it as width. Okay, so whenever this change, this will change as well. Your pocket will change. Now, the next thing you want to do is that you want to get rid of the opening cut, because it's kind of useless. So once you take it off, it won't show anything. The next thing you want to do is that you want to replace it with a family. You can use solid extrusion or void, but I like to start with solid extrusion and then change it to void. So whenever you build like any family, let's say you want to build a void after, like to cut through it, a good advice is that you always want to build the solid first and then change it to void. That way you avoid cutting into the stuff that you don't want, because automatically if you create a void, it will automatically cut. Okay, something to keep in mind. So I'll just do this, and what I would do is I just pick a reference plane. Okay, I just rely on the reference plane. Okay, let's pick that as my reference plane, and now I have is that this little pocket here. Okay, I'm just gonna put it in and then put it in. Now what I typically do is that I'm just gonna cut into here, and then just trim. Oh, yeah. Oh, let's see. Okay. Oh, I forgot to cut. Okay, I cut the wrong thing. Sorry. There we go. I cut the wrong thing. Let's delete that. Cut into that. Cut into that. So what you're doing is that you're basically creating a pocket where you want this to be, plus that little sliver. Okay? Doing that. And then next thing you want to do is that, okay, this is my pocket. I'm just going to get rid of this. Okay, get rid of that. Get rid of that. Now, what I'd like to do is that I like to hide a lot of the objects that I don't think I needed. Okay, so let's say I just want to hide it, so that you don't automatically snap into the wrong location. Because what happens is that Revit, whenever you snap to stuff, it's whatever the model object, it's going to snap to the model object first. So I always like to turn it off and then just say, okay, have a clear picture. Then I know that I'm going to snap to that. Okay. Next thing you want to do, once you have that particular object, is that change it to void. Okay. It will not automatically cut for you until you say cut geometry. So first I'm going to pick the wall and then pick my cut. Okay, there we go. So basically it just creates a sliver of void into your family. Next thing you want to do is you want to create your pocket. Okay, so I would just say, I'll just do a door. Okay, it's gonna be smaller. Yeah, sometimes you're gonna see a lot of reference plane, tiny reference plane and all that stuff. It's because, as you get too many, then yes, you're gonna see a lot of that stuff. So here I'm just gonna say, again, 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. You can always adjust this later on. So, and here I'm just gonna go in and say 1 inch and say choose thickness. Okay, because this thickness, typically for pocket door, I'll just say 1 3/4. There we go. So it's automatically adjusted to that. Now, the next thing you want to do is that you want to create like a pocket door that you could say, oh, how much it's going to offset, let's say opening, right? So what you could do is that you could say, okay, I want this to be opening offset. Okay, so what this will do is that if you want to adjust your opening, you can say, okay, how much the opening is going to be. If it's 2'8", 2'6", blah blah blah, it will show it to it. The next thing you want to do is that this thing is going to be the same as this width. So you're going to go in and then copy it 3 and 3.5. And do the same thing here. And 3 and 3.5. Okay? Yeah, make sure opening offset, let's say 2'8", and then this one I would just go 6'8". I'm just trying to round it up. Okay, whenever you see this, yeah, just trying to round it to the nearest number, because I know that sometimes this can get very annoying, especially when you switch from like metric and imperial. Okay, once you have that, then you go into do an extrusion. Okay, that's my first. That's my second. But make sure that when you pick, oops, I forgot to lock my reference plane, so I'll just pick it again. I'm going to pick that one and pick that one. And basically just round it up, just close it in. Okay. Once you're in there, again, just lift it up and lock it in. Okay. All right. So now you're going to build your first pocket door. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to load it into a project. Let's say I'm going to load it to project 1. Okay. I'm not going to call like normally what you do is that you save it and then call it family, but this one I'm just going to do it very fast. Okay. So here I'm just going to put my generic wall. Let's see how it turns out. So now I'll put a door. There we go. And if you switch it out, there we go, there's a pocket door. Let's see if it works. So here, what I'm going to do is that, I'm just going to change this to imperial. So if you want a pocket door to be, did I put in 2'8"? Let's say I want 2 feet. So what does is that it does that, and let's flex the family. Let's say I want it to be 4 feet. Let's say 7, 8 feet. Okay, works pretty well. So that's how you do it. So basically, what you do is that always establish your reference plane, because that way it becomes very easy once you just basically pick your reference plane, and it's always going to be correct. Okay, any questions so far? All right, so that concludes. If you have any other questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Jim probably left.